Good morning, Delaney. How are you today?
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm just enjoying this early wintry sort of morning with snow on the ground. And it puts me in mind to talk about something very important to our clients near and far as we move our way through the year-end giving season. And I'll start by talking about something which I recently shared with you. So I am a New Year's Eve baby. I was born on New Year's Eve at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And what you heard or heard, at least in the 80s, whenever you told grown-ups that you were a New Year's Eve baby, is that your parents must have been very happy because you were a tax deduction for the whole year.
Sure.
And you know that creates a strong impression on a young person's mind and gets them in tune with the niceties of the federal tax laws in ways that kids that aren't born on New Year's Eve probably are not. And another thing that it creates an impression in your mind about is the fact that, okay, so I was born at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If I'd been born maybe 13 or 14 hours later, there would have been no tax deduction. And so that great claim to fame of being a year-long tax deduction when you're only alive for a few hours of it would not have that benefit. So I think, that's also a very important point that, when you're delivered as a child corresponds nicely with the concept in the federal tax law of date of delivery, which is going to be like the key to what we're talking about today. So with that long preamble, perhaps, Delaney, you can share with us what date of delivery is and why it's important.
Of course. So the date of delivery is what we're going to be using to determine the year of deductibility for a donation. So for assets that fluctuate in value, like stock, it would help determine the value of the donation. And when relevant for the holding period of an asset, whether that be short or long term. And so while it's typically pretty clear to determine what the date of delivery is, delivery in and of itself as a concept doesn't mean the same thing for all types of gifts.
Okay, great. So I guess then what we'll do here is we'll go through some of the most common types of gifts that our clients may be making, or our clients that are nonprofit organizations may be receiving. And we'll talk about that nuanced tax concept of date of delivery for each of those. And maybe you can help us understand that a little better. So are you ready to start?
I am.
Okay, cool. So let's start with probably the most common type of donation a lot of people make these days, which is the credit card-based donation. So, I'm on my favorite charity's website. They got a donate now button. It's New Year's Eve. I've had a couple glasses of champagne. I'm feeling generous. I click donate now, put in my credit card number. What happens then? When is the date of delivery of that gift?
Yeah, so for credit card donations, it's pretty straightforward. Those are treated as delivered when the charge is made. So like you said, when you type in your credit card number and you click submit, or maybe you're at a booth at a festival, you're swiping your credit card on one of those little apps that they have. But you do bring up a good point, though. Sometimes people can get concerned because they're technically using borrowed funds or they're paying for something with credit, that this wouldn't be deductible until they repay those funds or maybe when they pay their credit card bill. But fortunately, the only date we care about in these scenarios is when the donation was actually paid to the charity.
Great. So I can make my donation now, even if I don't pay it until January or even February. If I'm not paying my credit card bill until then, it still relates back to 2021.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So what about if I Venmo my gift? Can I? And I'm not even sure what Venmoing is, but what happens if I Venmo?
Yeah, so Venmo can get a little bit tricky, but it's considered a peer-to-peer payment app, so slightly different. It's an app that allows you to make payments either through typically linking your bank account or your debit card or a credit card. And so the date of delivery would be the date that Venmo payment is made or submitted, corresponding to each of those different types of payment methods. However, Venmo, you really got to be careful and you have to pay attention to the terms of each of these platforms. Currently, Venmo doesn't allow its platform to be used to solicit or collect charitable contributions, but it does provide that there are ways to integrate Venmo into other platforms so that it could be used as a checkout option on an organization's app or website. So you just need to make sure you read the fine print with those types of apps.
Okay. Just so you know, when I've had a couple glasses of champagne on New Year's Eve, I don't usually read the fine print, but I think I'll just stay away from the
So
Venmo.
maybe, yeah, stay away from them.
That would probably work. Okay. So and then the next topic on my hit list was the text donation. Sometimes you'll have an organization that says you donate now, text to this number, and apparently somehow it's linked up to your phone. I've never actually done it. I'm not sure whether folks are doing it or not, but do you know how that would play out?
Yeah, I actually don't know if I've done it either, but I do know how it works. So text message donations are going to be considered delivered on the date that the text message is sent if that donation is charged to the donor's phone or their wireless account.
Okay. So the date it's sent. So that would still get me in under the wire for New Year's Eve if I happen to do it as the clock was counting down.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. What else do we have on the list here? Well, let's go a little bit old school. Let's say I get out my checkbook and I'm writing a check to my favorite charity. What are the rules around that?
So checks are typically going to follow the mailbox rule. They're treated as delivered on the date of mailing. So the date that you would drop the check in the envelope into the mailbox. In these circumstances, it would be important to use certified mail in order to establish the date of mailing for your records.
Okay, so if I write up the check, put it in an envelope, and go out to the mailbox and drop it in sometime on New Year's Eve evening, it's not probably going to get picked up. It's not going to have a stamp on it. I would assume, at the very least, I would have to make it before the mail gets picked up on New Year's Eve, and preferably go to actually the window in the post office and have that certified, have it sent certified.
Yeah, it would be ideal to get that stamp with the date on it.
Okay. Now, what if I'm thinking, well, hey, you just told me I can pay my credit card bill in January. And if I do that, I will get credit for the swiping charge that I did back in December. What if I do a certified mailing on the 31st or even the 30th, but I post date the check? So it's, dated January 15th, which is before I would even have paid my credit card bill. Do I still get credit there?
No, that's clever, but it's not going to fly. If a check is post dated, they are not considered delivered until the date that the check is dated. So unfortunately, that donation is not going to be deductible in 2021 if you have it post dated for a date in 2022.
Okay, gotcha. So no post dating. Okay, let's see. So another thing that folks often do towards the end of the year, getting ready for New Year's resolutions, let's say, looking into the closet, you got a lot of, clothes behind, maybe the pandemic 15 or whatever they're calling it. It may have rendered a few of your suits, let's say, smaller than they used to be. And you think, you know what, I'll clean these out and I'll take them and I'll donate them to the Salvation Army. Let's say I do it on New Year's Eve and they're open, drop the clothes off, get a receipt. What's the date of delivery there?
Yep, so that'll be New Year's Eve. With tangible personal property, things like clothing or maybe toiletries that you're donating to a homeless shelter, those donations are going to be delivered on the day that the property is received by the charity. So in your example, the day that you drive up, you drop off the donations.
Okay. Let's say then I'm not donating the clothes. What I'm doing is I'm donating my old car. So I drive my car up and I park it there and I walk in and I hand over the keys. Does that work the same way?
Not exactly. That one's going to be different. So because donating a car requires the transfer of title, the date of delivery is not going to occur until the charity has both possession of the vehicle and a valid title. Okay.
So if you have something that has title, it takes both the possession of the property and the title to the property.
Exactly.
To complete the delivery of the gift. Okay.
Yes.
I guess the other thing that we wanted to talk about in the specific items were donations of stock. So certificated stock, what do you do to transfer that? And when is the transfer effective?
Yeah, so there's a couple different methods of delivery we can talk about. First and foremost, donations of stock have to be unconditional and accompanied by a properly endorsed stock certificate. That's pretty straightforward. With respect to hand delivery, so, if we're going to hand deliver the stock certificate, that donation is considered delivered on the day that the organization receives the stock certificate.
Mhm.
If we're going to mail it, it would be delivered on the day that the mailing is postmarked. And the caveat for this is that the donation has to be received in the quote unquote ordinary course of the mails. And so this is a term that's used in the regulations, but its context is not entirely clear. I think you might have had an example for this one.
Well, yeah, I've pondered this one myself. I've looked for what the meaning of the ordinary course of the mails is. My assumption is that, if you happen to have, say, a close personal relationship, with the Postmaster General, let's say, maybe you've appointed him, I don't know. Or
As we all do.
Right. Well, it comes up from time to time. You ask them to hold on to your stock that you put in the mail. That might not be in the ordinary course of the mails if you actually, have a way to influence the speed with which it's delivered. I can't imagine what else it means. Someone, when they wrote the regulation, probably had something in mind. So I can only guess as to exactly what that means. I do want to sort of take a pause and put a plug in. We've covered this stuff pretty quickly, and I thank you for that, Delaney. We do have an article that we recently published, your year-end charitable deduction worksheet, cheat sheet, which covers these rules and a few others that may be relevant for folks and some more esoteric types of gifts. We certainly would refer that to people if they'd like to review those rules. And one last question for you before we go. Obviously we represent a lot of nonprofit organizations. And so the question comes up, okay, there's this time sensitivity to everything in the tax law, but when you get your donation made, when the date of delivery is, there's a lot of time sensitivity around that. When donee organizations receive certain kinds of gifts, they are required to provide a gift acknowledgement letter. And tax being what it is, I can only assume that there is some sensitivity to the timing around when you send it. So what are the timeline requirements for that? Do we need to get them out before the end of the year? What's the rule?
Yeah, so they really should be sent out contemporaneously with the gift, but absolutely no later than the date that the tax return would need to be filed. Mm-hmm. The best practice is to provide them as soon as possible, but a lot of organizations send them out once a year, particularly if they receive many donations over the course of the year.
Over the course of the year, okay. So not by December 31st, but usually quickly as you can thereafter. Some organizations by the end of January, certainly no later than the personal income tax returns are due. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for walking through that with me. I hope you have a great holiday season, and to all of our watchers out there, I hope you do as well and get those donations in or get them in hand. Thanks a lot.